Joining me now, Michael Singleton, a Republican political consultant and contributing host to Vox Media's Consider It, and Emily Tisch Sussman, former vice president of campaigns for the Center for American Progress and host of your playlist. Emily, Jonathan Capehart wrote in the Washington Post that Biden's speech yesterday was what a president would look like. He's basically saying that Biden is framing this election as a moral question. Is that how you see it?
I think that's exactly what Biden had hoped to get out of it. It's the most he could hope to get out of it. And Booker as well with his speech yesterday. What they did and the timing of it with Trump visiting the hospitals and then turning his visit into like a campaign video for himself, it provided a perfect contrast of what looks presidential in the face of a national tragedy. They stood up, they spoke with emotion, they spoke plainly, and what they acknowledged what a lot of people wanted to hear, which is that Trump didn't start the problem of white supremacy and violence in this country, but he certainly gave it a place in the White House and he validated it. And to speak so directly and plainly provided a contrast to what Trump was doing and showed that they can be presidential in the face of a moment when so many people are looking for leadership.
Sure, Michael. Is that, though, exactly what the president wants? Because if you think about the president's tweet where he says, well, China is sure going to like it and everything will crash, he's talking about money. So is he signaling to America, you want morality or do you want money in your pocket? And not necessarily greed, but financial security.
I think, Stephanie, that is what he's attempting to do. But I think when you ask most voters, even independent GOP-leaning voters who may have sort of held their noses to vote for Donald Trump, sure, the economy is doing well. But when you look at the behavior of the president, when you look at some of the characteristics that the president exhibits, are these the types of character traits and behaviors that you would want your child to look up to? And I think when you ask that fundamental moral question of who are we, what type of country should we aim to be, how should we treat one another, that's a very, very different question that I would argue hits beyond the material, but it hits at people's hearts, at their souls. And I think that's what Joe Biden was attempting to do, or did do rather, in his speech yesterday. And so when you pose that fundamental question to people, I think candor would oblige even those who are the most ardent of Trump supporters to say, well, you know what? I would tend to agree the behavior exhibited by the president is not the type of behavior that I have come to expect out of our president. And I think that is a message that Joe Biden hit a home run on yesterday.
But Emily, is that the right thing for Democrats to allow the president to have the narrative, it's morality or money? Why can't those Democrats say, we can deliver both? There were people who voted for the president who said, listen, I don't like him, but, you know, I really need to care about financial security. Why can't Democrats say, we can deliver that financial security and at the same time be moral leaders?
Oh, they absolutely have to, and I think they are. But I do think it's important that when there are moments like this, that we pause on it. I actually think a big mistake in the second debate was when gun violence was brought up and the idea of proposals was brought up, the Democrats moved quickly to talking about structural reform in the Senate. That did not give the issue the moment that it deserved. And I think that people who have been impacted and advocate on gun violence do not feel like the issue got the respect that it deserved. So by candidates sitting and focusing on this moment, they're specifically speaking to two pieces of the base that they have to turn out, both in the primary and in the presidential election. They're speaking specifically to white women in the suburbs who ended up voting for Trump by majority, but do not like him, and it's a lot of the people that Michael was just talking about. But specifically in the primary, if you want to win young voters, you better be bold on this issue. There are a lot of young people who have grown up in, you know, quote, the mass shooting generation, which is terrifying, and they see this as a very top issue to them. So if any Democratic candidate wants to really pop with young people, they better be very clear and direct on the issue of gun violence.
Well, let's listen to some of them, because those 2020 candidates were talking policies yesterday. I want to listen.
The majority of gun owners in America literally agree we should have universal background checks, but we have a leader in the Senate that won't even put the bill on the floor for a vote.
You can still have hunting. And what's happened is that we've had a vast majority of people in this country come to believe that.
When I am president, we're going to get rid of the filibuster and we're going to pass some serious gun legislation.
Sure, Michael, last week after the debates, we sat here talking about 2020 candidates destroying one another, killing one another over every single topic out there. Is safety now the one thing that is uniting them all against the president?
I mean, I think it is, Stephanie, but I would caution Democrats because we have been here before, right? Ever since the expiration of the assault weapons ban from '94, if I believe correctly, Democrats and even some Republicans have attempted to pass some form of comprehensive legislation. Even when you look at the polling data, I happen to be a gun owner myself, you will see a significant percentage of gun owners who say, hey, you know, I am for some type of broadening of background checks. I am for perhaps banning, rather, drums, which did allow the shooter in Iowa to have 100 rounds. I don't think those types of things should be in the general public. And I think there is some potential for Democrats to coalesce around this idea of message if they can actually talk directly to some gun owners to, in return, put pressure on Republicans in Congress to say, no, ignore the NRA. Look at what your voters are saying. Look at where their positions are on this issue. And I think you could see enough Republicans in the Senate, because you only need 60, maybe 5 or 6, to say, you know what, Mitch McConnell, you know what, NRA, I hear what you're saying, but I have to listen to my voters, and they are demanding change on this. This is the position that I have to take on this issue.
First, doesn't need to